12,000 years ago, as the Ice Age reached its final chapters, the world stood on the brink of a geological catastrophe that would rewrite human history. In this fertile cradle, a tribe of Homo Sapiens lived in harmony with the shifting seasons, unaware that the warming climate was secretly forging their greatest nightmare. Life here was a delicate balance of survival and skill. Men prepared their hunting gear, trusting in the permanence of the mountains that had sheltered their ancestors. These were the first masters of technology, using stone and bone to conquer the wild, yet their ingenuity would soon be tested against the raw power of nature. The spring air felt unusually warm, bringing a sense of prosperity to the gatherers as they filled their baskets with the bounty of the defrosting earth beneath them. This was the last moment of peace for the tribe. They celebrated the return of the sun, not knowing that the heat was melting the world above. High above the valley, the great ice dams were groaning. Miles of frozen walls held back billions of cubic meters of meltwater, now reaching their breaking point. What began as a slow drip soon became a steady flow. The silence of the high peaks was broken by the sound of liquid water eating through ice. The earth began to tremble. A low-frequency vibration hummed through the ground, a warning signal that only the animals seemed to understand as the pressure built. The predators were the first to react. Instincts honed over millennia told them that the valley was no longer a sanctuary but a death trap about to close. Fear bridged the gap between hunter and prey. In the face of a true geological apocalypse, every creature turned its back on the valley and began to run. Then, the dam failed. With a sound like 1,000 thunderclaps, the ice wall disintegrated, unleashing a vertical ocean of dark, freezing water into the narrow gorge. This was the Great Flood, a liquid hammer striking the earth with the energy of countless atomic bombs,
The water is
erasing
coming! Run,
everything in its
everyone,
path
run!
with terrifying, unstoppable momentum.
Get to higher ground!
Within seconds, the homes of the Homo Sapiens were gone. The valley floor transformed into a churning vortex of mud, ice, and the ruins of a civilization. The tribal chief's voice rose above the roar. He pointed toward the high ground, the only hope left in a world that had suddenly turned into water. Every second was a battle for life. They ran with lungs burning and hearts hammering, hearing the roar of the flood closing in right behind their heels. Mothers refused to let go, dragging their children up the treacherous slopes as the freezing water nipped at their heels, threatening to pull them into the abyss.
Don't look down!
Survival was written in blood on the stones.
Help me, I can't hold
They
on.
climbed until their fingers bled, misdriven by the primal urge to reach the safety of the high peaks. Even the giants were helpless. A woolly mammoth, the titan of the tundra, was lifted like a leaf and carried away by the sheer volume of the torrent. The sight was a brutal reminder of human fragility. If nature could claim the mammoth, what chance did a small group of skin-clad nomads truly have? The sky turned dark as the water rose, blocking the sun and filling the air with a cold, damp mist that choked the breath of those fleeing. Geography was being rewritten in real time. The flood didn't just move through the landscape. It violently reconstructed it, carving scars that would remain for 12 millennia. From their precarious perches, the survivors watched their world vanish. The Green Valley was now a raging brown ocean, filled with the debris of their lives. The loss was immeasurable, there was no time for grief. The water was still rising, and the mountains offered new dangers they had yet to face. Secondary surges hammered the cliffs, sending tremors through the rock. The survivors held on to each other, praying the very mountain wouldn't crumble beneath their feet. The tools of their survival were lost to the deep. Now they would have to rely on their bare hands and the collective will of the tribe. The retreat led them into a narrow gorge. It was a natural bottleneck, a path of escape that was also a corridor of extreme danger and death. They were not alone. The same floods that drove the humans upward had also forced the valley's deadliest predators into these very same narrow mountain passes. A desperate saber-toothed cat, cornered and terrified by the water, now viewed the approaching tribe not as prey, but as a threat to its own survival. Fire was their only shield. The leader stepped forward, at his torch a small beacon of defiance against the ancient beast and the encroaching darkness of the storm. A tense standoff began. In this moment, the rules of the wild were suspended. Two apex predators faced off, both fighting a losing battle against nature. They moved with agonizing slowness, eyes locked on the predator. It was a dance of mutual fear, an unspoken truce, born from the chaos of the flood. The water had found them. A finger of the great flood diverted into the gorge, turning the canyon floor into a rushing river of death within seconds. The ground was giving way. One by one, they leaped across the crumbling stone, knowing that a single slip meant an instant end in the torrent. Brotherhood was the ultimate weapon. No one was left behind as they fought for every inch of solid ground in this vertical race against the rising tide. Another monster blocked their path. The short-faced bear, the largest mammalian predator to ever walk the earth, stood between the humans and their mountain refuge. Unity was their strength. Together, they raised a wall of spears and a chorus of defiant cries, using their collective will to challenge the mountain's master. Even the bear knew when to retreat. As the freezing spray hit its massive paws, it turned, choosing flight over a fight it couldn't afford to win. The water was relentless. It chased them up the rock, a persistent stalker that seemed determined to reclaim the lives that had managed to escape its first strike. They reached the high plateau just as the day began to fade. Below them, the gorge was a churning mess, a tomb for those less fortunate. Exhaustion finally took hold. They lay on the freezing earth, their bodies broken but their spirits still flickering like the dying embers of their torches. The leader looked back at the world they had lost. Everything they knew was gone, buried under a sea that didn't exist when the sun rose. Night fell over a new world. The roaring had subsided into a haunting, a rhythmic wash of waves against the newly formed cliffs of their island refuge. The battle for warmth began. Without fire, the freezing night of the late Ice Age would finish what the floodwaters had started hours before. A single spark brought hope. As the small flame grew, it cast long shadows of survivors who had looked into the eyes of extinction and refused to blink. They huddled together for warmth, the heat of their bodies, a testament to the survival of the species against the most violent forces of the planet. In the distance, the predator watched the fire. For one night, the ancient enmity was forgotten, replaced by a shared trauma of the great cataclysm. The stars shone with a cold indifference. Above the chaos, the universe remained unchanged, while below, the history of a planet had been violently altered. They slept the sleep of the exhausted. Tomorrow would bring a new struggle. But for now, they were alive. And that was the greatest victory. Morning light revealed the true scale of the change. A vast inland sea now stretched to the horizon, a shimmering blue grave for a forgotten world. They were the witnesses to a new era. The maps in their minds were now useless, and the world they had mastered was gone forever. He knew they could never go back. To survive, they would have to move forward, to find new lands that the water had not yet claimed. In the midst of the desolation, life remained. A small green shoot emerging from the barren stone promised that the earth would eventually heal and bloom again. The migration began. They became the nomads of the heights, traveling along the ridges of the world to find a place where they could rebuild their lives. Their greatest asset was not the spear or the stone, but the hand offered to a comrade. Cooperation was the secret to the Homo Sapiens' survival. Wow, they passed boulders the size of houses, moved miles by the flood, and left as silent monuments to a power that dwarfed all living things. Over the ridge, a new horizon awaited,
is
a
the
valley
land
untouched
the
by the flood,
ancestors promised us.
where the soil was rich and the animals were
We
plentiful
will make it bloom.
once again. Today we see the evidence of their struggle in the very landscape. The scars of the Great Flood remain etched into the earth, a geological memory.
This layer here,
Science
the
confirms the
conglomerate you
legends,
see,
the sediment
is
layers
definitive proof
tell
of
a
the
story of a
massive,
sudden
ancient
violent release of
floodwaters
water
that swept through this
that
region
changed the face of the
millennia
planet
ago.
in days. Oral traditions and ancient art carry the echoes of this trauma. The story of the Great Flood is a universal myth, shared by cultures across the globe. We look back at these giants and wonder how our ancestors survived. They didn't just endure, they learned, they adapted, and they thrived against all odds. Knowledge became the shield of the future. The survivors told the story of the water, ensuring that the next generation would know when to run. And they built stronger, higher, and smarter.
Rains came,
Every
and the
catastrophe
waters
was a lesson
swallowed
in
the
resilience,
land.
pushing the
Everything
human
was
race to
lost,
innovate and evolve their way of
save
life.
for the
Their way,
few.
peace returned,
Together now.
but the memory of the great water
This foundation
remained a
is
part of their
strong.
identity,
It will
a reminder
protect us.
of the power of the planet they called home. He saw a future that had almost been extinguished. The bloodline of the survivors continued, a thread of life stretching through the chaos of the ages. Our modern world is built on the foundation of that survival. Every city we inhabit today is a testament to the endurance of those early humans. We carry the survival instincts of the Ice Age within us. The fear of the dark and the power of the water are part of our DNA. The journey of Homo sapiens is one of constant movement and adaptation. We are a species defined by our ability to overcome the impossible. Nature eventually hides its scars, but the history remains for those who know how to read the rocks and the stories of our ancestors. We are the descendants of those who ran, those who climbed, and those who refused to let the floodwaters claim the light of humanity. The spear was planted in a new earth. The survival of the tribe was secured,
We are here.
and a new chapter of the human
Journey
story
is over.
began in the sun. The universe watched as a small, clever creature reclaimed its place on the planet, ready to face whatever challenges the shifting climate would bring next. We walk the same paths they did, breathing the same air, and carrying the same indomitable will to live and thrive in an ever-changing world. In the face of the Great Flood, Homo sapiens found their true strength, a legacy of courage that continues to define our journey through time. From the ashes of the Ice Age and the depths of the Great Flood, we emerged stronger. Our story is one of hope, eternal and bright.